The most powerful man in Chicago didn't care about the freezing rain. He didn't care about his custom, tailored wool overcoat soaking up the muddy water. He just stared at the heavily scarred, shivering security guard sitting in the dark alleyway, let out a choked, desperate gasp, and dropped straight to his knees. 10 feet away, standing under the bright, warm awning of the city's most expensive steakhouse, a young tech executive named Chidi watched his entire universe shatter into a million pieces. He had just thrown his own disabled brother out like trash to protect his image. Now, the billionaire he was trying to impress was bowing to him in the dirt. If Chidi had just let his brother inside out of the cold, none of this would have happened. But pride is a dangerous, blinding poison, and fate was about to deliver the ultimate cure. If you want to see exactly how an arrogant man loses his entire empire in a single heartbeat, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because in these stories, the cruel always fall, and the humble always rise. Money makes people blind, but absolute terror makes them see everything with perfect, devastating clarity. The rain was coming down in heavy, violently cold sheets, washing across the dark pavement of Michigan Avenue. Thunder rattled the thick glass windows of the Starlight Steakhouse. Inside, wealthy patrons were eating prime rib, drinking expensive wine, and laughing. But outside, the air had gone completely dead. Time seemed to freeze. Chidi Kalu stood frozen under the restaurant's awning. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. His mouth was open, but no sound came out. Beside him, his beautiful fiancée, Chloe, grabbed his arm. Her diamond ring caught the harsh flashing light of a nearby street lamp. "Chidi," she whispered, her voice shaking with panic. "What is he doing? Why is Marcus Vance on his knees? Who is that beggar?" Chidi couldn't answer. He couldn't breathe. Marcus Vance wasn't just a rich man. He was a global logistics mogul. He owned skyscrapers, shipping lines, and thousands of employees. A single signature from Marcus Vance was going to make Chidi the youngest CEO in his company's history tonight. Vance was a man known for his cold, ruthless business tactics. He never showed emotion. He fired executives for fun. But right now, the great Marcus Vance was kneeling in a dirty puddle. His leather briefcase lay abandoned in the water. His 2 massive bodyguards stood frozen behind him, completely unsure of what to do. "Sir?" one of the guards asked, stepping forward with an umbrella. "Sir, the ground is wet. You need to stand up." Vance ignored him. He didn't even blink. The billionaire slowly reached out his trembling hands. The freezing rain plastered his thick white hair to his forehead. He reached out toward the shivering man sitting against the wet brick wall. Nnamdi Kalu pulled his thin, faded green jacket tighter around his chest. He was 35 years old, but tonight, he looked ancient. His right leg, heavily braced and deformed, was stretched out in front of him. A cheap wooden cane lay in the mud by his side. But Vance wasn't looking at the cane. He was staring directly at the thick, angry, twisted burn scars that covered the left side of Nnamdi's neck and disappeared beneath his wet collar. "It's you," Vance whispered. His voice broke, tears mixed with the rain streaming down his face. "After all these years, it's really you." Chidi felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. His perfectly tailored $5,000 suit suddenly felt like a straitjacket. His mind was racing. How did Marcus Vance know his useless, embarrassing brother? Why was he crying? Chidi took a step forward, raising his hand, trying to fix the disaster unfolding in front of him. "Mr. Vance!" Chidi yelled over the sound of the storm, forcing a fake, terrified smile onto his face. "Mr. Vance, please, come inside. This man is just a vagrant. He's crazy. Let the valet call the police to clear him out. We have a table waiting for you." Vance didn't turn around. He didn't acknowledge Chidi at all. He just kept looking into Nnamdi's tired and weary brown eyes. Before the expensive suits and the luxury cars, there was only blood, fire, and a choice that ruined a young man's life forever. 15 years ago, things were very different. 15 years ago, nobody looked at Nnamdi with pity. They looked at him with awe. He was a star athlete, a college football powerhouse with a full scholarship to a massive university. NFL scouts were already watching him. He was strong, fast, and completely unstoppable. He carried the hopes of his entire family on his broad shoulders. Chidi, on the other hand, was just a skinny 20-year-old kid. He was smart, but he was incredibly jealous of the spotlight his older brother commanded. Chidi wanted to be the king. He wanted the glory. But he was always just Namdi's little brother, until the night the world burned down. And it was a Tuesday night in November. Heavy rain, just like tonight. Namdi was driving his old beat-up Honda down Interstate 94, heading back to his college dorm. Chidi was in the passenger seat, complaining about how unfair life was, complaining about how he deserved a nicer car. Suddenly, the sky lit up. A massive semi-truck 2 miles ahead blew a tire. It jackknifed across all 4 lanes of the highway. Cars slammed into it. Metal crushed against metal. The sound of screeching tires and breaking glass echoed into the night sky. Namdi slammed on his brakes. The Honda spun out, sliding off the road and crashing into a grassy ditch. They were safe. The airbags deployed. Chidi was screaming, shaking in the passenger seat, but he didn't have a single scratch on him. "Stay here!" Namdi had yelled, kicking his door open. "Are you crazy?" Chidi screamed back, grabbing his brother's arm. "Look at it! The cars are leaking gas! It's going to explode! Don't be a hero, Namdi! Sit down!" But Namdi Kalu wasn't built to sit down while people suffered. He looked at the wreckage. Through the pouring rain, he saw a black luxury sedan flipped upside down. Smoke was pouring from the hood, and inside, a man was violently beating his bloody fists against the jammed window, trapped like a rat. Namdi pulled his arm away from Chidi. "I can't let him die," he said. Namdi ran. He ran through the mud and the jagged glass. He reached the black sedan just as the flames started licking up the side of the engine. The man inside was screaming in sheer terror. The metal frame was totally crushed. Namdi grabbed the door handle and pulled with all his incredible athletic strength. The metal groaned, but the door wouldn't budge. "Help me!" the man screamed, coughing violently as dark, toxic smoke filled the cabin. "I've got you!" Namdi yelled back. Namdi wrapped his hands in his jacket. He punched the window. Once, twice. The glass shattered. Namdi reached inside, grabbing the man by his expensive jacket, and pulled him out through the broken window. They made it 5 steps away. Then the gas tank ignited. The explosion was deafening. A massive ball of orange fire blew out outward, hitting Namdi in the back. The sheer force of the shockwave threw him 30 feet into the air. He landed on the hard concrete highway. A heavy piece of flaming metal debris from the car flew through the air and landed directly on his right leg. Namdi screamed in absolute agony, and the left side of his neck and shoulder were on fire. The flames burned through his clothes, searing his skin, melting his flesh. His leg was completely crushed. The bone was shattered into dozens of pieces. Chidi had watched the whole thing from the safety of the ditch. He didn't run to help. He just covered his ears and closed his eyes. The man Namdi pulled from the car survived. The paramedics loaded him into an ambulance, and he vanished into the night. Namdi survived too, but his life was over. He spent 8 months in the hospital. He endured 12 agonizing skin graft surgeries. The doctors had to put metal rods in his leg just to save it from amputation. His football scholarship was gone. His NFL dreams vanished like smoke. When he finally left the hospital, he walked with a heavy, painful limp. His beautiful face was scarred forever. People stopped looking at him with awe. They looked away. They whispered. And Chidi? Chidi didn't help his brother recover. Instead, he used the money their parents saved up for Namdi's future to pay for his own business degree. Some men build their castles on solid rock. Others build them on the broken backs of the very people they left behind. Years passed. Chidi climbed the corporate ladder with ruthless speed. He was charming, manipulative, and incredibly ambitious. He moved into a luxury high-rise condo. He bought expensive suits. He got engaged to Chloe, a woman who loved money just as much as he did. To Chidi, Namdi was a ghost, a deeply embarrassing secret. Namdi lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment on the dangerous side of town. And because of his criminal lack of a degree and his severe physical limitations, the only job he could get was a night shift security guard at a warehouse. He barely made enough to eat. Sometimes his leg hurt so badly in the cold weather that he couldn't even stand up to cook a meal. Chidi never visited. He never called to see if his brother had enough money for his pain medication. When Chidi's wealthy co-workers asked about his family, Chidi lied with a completely straight face. "Oh, my family is back in Africa," Chidi would say, sipping expensive champagne at corporate parties. "They own a massive estate. Very successful people. I'm practically royalty back home." He completely erased Namdi from his reality. Until earlier today, the most important day of Chidi's life. It was 4 p.m. Chidi was standing in his luxury condo, staring at himself in the mirror. He adjusted his red silk tie. Tonight was the pitch to Marcus Vance. Chidi had spent 6 months developing a massive logistics software program. If Vance bought it, Chidi would get a $10 million bonus and a seat on the board of directors. "You look perfect," Chloe said, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Tonight we become unstoppable." "Vance is a shark," Chidi replied, staring at his reflection. "But he's old. I can outsmart him. I have the entire presentation loaded on the encrypted silver hard drive. Once I show him the numbers, he won't be able to say no." Chidi grabbed his leather briefcase, kissed Chloe, and walked out the door. He drove to the Starlight Steakhouse. He tipped the valet a $100 bill. He walked into the restaurant like he owned the place. Then he ordered a bottle of $2,000 wine to wait for the billionaire. Then, at 5:30 p.m., Chidi opened his briefcase to review the numbers one last time. His stomach dropped out of his body. The pocket was empty. He dug his hands inside, tearing through papers, his breathing getting shallow. It wasn't there. The silver hard drive, his entire career, the key to the $10 million bonus. He had left it sitting on the marble kitchen island in his condo. "No," Chidi whispered, his face turning pale. "What's wrong?" Chloe asked. "The drive. I left it at home." Chidi looked at his watch. Traffic in downtown Chicago was at a complete standstill because of the storm. If he left now, it would take him an hour to get home and an hour to get back. Vance was arriving in 30 minutes. If Vance sat down and the presentation wasn't ready, the billionaire would walk out. Chidi's hands shook wildly as he pulled out his phone. He scrolled past his wealthy friends. None of them had a key to his condo. He scrolled to the bottom of his contacts, to a name he hadn't called in 8 months. Namdi. Namdi had a spare key, only because the building manager required an emergency contact on file. Chidi hit the call button. It rang 4 times before a deep, raspy voice answered. "Hello?" Namdi said, sounding exhausted. "Namdi, listen to me very carefully," Chidi snapped. No greeting. No asking how his brother was doing. "I left my silver hard drive on my kitchen counter. I need it at the Starlight Steakhouse downtown immediately." Namdi coughed softly. "Chidi, it's pouring rain outside. The weather makes my leg lock up. And I have to be at the warehouse for my shift soon." Chidi gritted his teeth, his anger flaring. "I don't care about your stupid warehouse job. This is my career, Namdi. Millions of dollars are on the line. I need that drive in 30 minutes. Just get on the bus and bring it to me. Do this one simple thing, right?" There was a long silence on the phone. Namdi looked around his dark, cold apartment. He looked at his ruined leg. He knew his brother didn't respect him. He knew Chidi was ashamed of him. But Namdi's heart was too pure to hold on to hatred. "I'll get it," Namdi said quietly. "I'm leaving now. You can dress a man in the finest silk in the world, but his rotten soul will always show right through his eyes." 35 minutes later, the heavy oak doors of the Starlight Steakhouse swung open. The maitre d', and wearing a sharp tuxedo, immediately stepped back and covered his nose. The wealthy couples sitting near the entrance stopped cutting their steaks. Silence rippled through the front of the restaurant. Namdi stood in the doorway. He was completely drenched. Freezing water dripped from his nose and chin. His faded green security jacket was soaked straight through to his skin. He leaned heavily on his wooden cane, his chest heaving up and down. His cheap boots left dirty, muddy puddles on the spotless marble floor. The severe burn scars on his neck were violently red from the freezing wind. Chidi saw him from across the lobby. He didn't feel relief that his presentation was saved. He felt pure, unadulterated rage. "Who is that?" Chloe whispered, staring in horror. "Chidi, tell the staff to throw that bum out before Mr. and Vance gets here." Chidi's face was hot with shame. He stomped across the lobby, his leather shoes clicking angrily on the marble. He didn't greet his brother. He didn't say thank you. He grabbed Namdi by the upper arm, his fingers digging painfully into the muscle. "What are you doing here?" Chidi hissed through his teeth. He dragged Namdi backwards. Namdi stumbled, his bad leg dragging behind him as Chidi forcefully pushed him back out the heavy doors and into the freezing storm. Chidi dragged his brother around the corner of the building, pushing him hard against the wet brick wall of the dark alleyway beside the restaurant. I brought it," Namdi stammered, his teeth violently chattering from the cold. He unzipped his wet jacket. From a dry plastic bag tucked near his chest, he pulled out the silver hard drive. Chidi snatched it out of his hands instantly. "The bus broke down on 4th Street, Namdi explained, shivering so hard his cane was tapping against the brick. "I had to walk the last 6 blocks in the rain. My leg... Chidi, I can barely stand. Can I just wait inside the lobby for a few minutes? Just to warm up before I walk to the train?" Chidi looked at Namdi like he was a disgusting insect. He looked at the muddy boots, the cheap clothes, the terrifying scars. "Are you insane?" Chidi spat. "Look at you! You look like a homeless crack addict. Marcus Vance is pulling up at any second. If he sees you anywhere near me, he will think I come from garbage. You are ruining everything." Namdi's tired eyes widened in shock. The insult hit him harder than the freezing rain. "Chidi, I just walked through a storm to save your job." "You did what you were supposed to do," Chidi snapped, turning his back. "Now get out of here. Walk to the train. Sit in the alley. I don't care. Just stay out of my sight until I close this deal." Chidi walked away, leaving his brother alone in the freezing dark. Namdi's bad leg finally gave out. The pain was too much. He slid down the rough brick wall, landing on the cold, wet concrete. He pulled his knees to his chest, closed his eyes, and just let the rain hit his face. He felt like he was nothing. 2 minutes later, 3 massive black SUVs pulled up to the curb. And now, here they were. Marcus Vance, the billionaire mogul, was on his knees in the mud. He reached out with a trembling hand and gently touched the wet fabric of Namdi's faded jacket. "Ah, I never knew your name," Vance whispered, his voice cracking with heavy emotion. "I hired private investigators. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to find you. But the paramedics didn't record your name at the hospital. And by the time I woke up from my coma, you were gone." Chidi stood under the awning, his heart completely stopping. He stared at the back of the billionaire's head. What was he talking about? Investigators? Comas? Namdi opened his eyes slowly. He looked at the wealthy man kneeling in front of him. He looked at the sharp jawline, the piercing blue eyes. Namdi's breath caught in his throat. "It's you," Namdi said softly. "The man from the black sedan." "Yes," Vance sobbed, his shoulders shaking. "Yes, I'm the man from the sedan, the man whose life you saved. I'm the man whose life you traded for your own." The bodyguard stood in stunned silence. Chloe gasped, dropping her designer purse on the ground. Chidi's mind snapped like a dry twig. No, 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 no. The stranger from the highway crash 15 years ago. The man Namdi pulled from the flames. The man who indirectly caused Nnamdi to lose his scholarship, his leg, and his future. It was Marcus Vance. You know this vagrant? Chidi yelled, his voice sounding desperate and high-pitched. He stepped out into the rain, totally panicked. Mr. Vance, there must be some mistake. This man is a nobody. He's just a warehouse guard. Marcus Vance finally turned his head. He looked up at Chidi. The sadness in the billionaire's eyes instantly vanished. It was replaced by a look of pure, terrifying, ice-cold fury. Vance stood up slowly, and he wiped the mud from his knees. He looked at Chidi's expensive suit, and then looked down at Nnamdi sitting freezing on the ground. "Vagrant," Vance said, his voice dropping to a dangerous, deadly whisper. "This man is the reason I am breathing the air on this earth." Vance turned to his massive bodyguards. "Help him up, gently." The two giant men rushed forward. They carefully lifted Nnamdi off the wet concrete, handing him his wooden cane. One of the guards took off his own dry, warm jacket and wrapped it around Nnamdi's shivering shoulders. "Mr. Vance," Chidi stammered, holding up the silver hard drive like a shield. "Please, sir, let's just go inside. We have business to discuss. I have the logistics presentation right here. We can make millions together." Vance walked right up to Chidi. He stood inches from Chidi's face. "Oh, we are going inside, Chidi," Vance said, his eyes burning with a dark, ruthless fire. "We are going to sit down at that table, and we are going to have a very long conversation about your future." Vance turned back to Nnamdi. His voice softened instantly. "Walk with me, son. Please. Allow me to buy you dinner." Nnamdi looked at Chidi. He saw the pure terror in his brother's eyes. Nnamdi didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply nodded, leaning on his cane, and walked through the heavy glass doors alongside the billionaire. Chidi swallowed hard. His hands were shaking so violently he almost dropped the hard drive. He felt like he was walking to his own execution. You can build a wall of lies 10 stories high, but it only takes one single word of truth to bring the entire thing crashing down. And the interior of the Starlight Steakhouse was warm and smelled of roasted garlic and expensive wine. But to Chidi, the air felt like absolute ice. He walked behind Marcus Vance and Nnamdi like a prisoner marching to the gallows. The wealthy patrons in the dining room stopped eating. They stared in total shock. The most powerful billionaire in Chicago was walking side by side with a soaking wet, heavily scarred man in a faded green jacket. The maitre d' rushed forward, his face pale. He looked at Nnamdi's muddy boots, staining the pristine carpet. "Mr. Vance, sir, I am so sorry. I didn't know this person was with you. Would you like me to move you to a private room so you don't have to be seen with—" Marcus Vance stopped walking. He slowly turned his head, and the look in his blue eyes was so incredibly cold that the maitre d' actually took a step backward. "If you disrespect my guest one more time," Vance said, his voice deadly and quiet, "I will buy this restaurant tomorrow morning, and I will make you scrub the dumpsters in the alley out back for the rest of your natural life. Do you understand me?" The maitre d' swallowed hard, his hands shaking. Yes, Mr. Vance, right this way." They were led to the best table in the center of the room, a massive, round mahogany table sitting directly under a crystal chandelier. Vance gently pulled out a plush leather chair for Nnamdi. He treated the scarred security guard with more respect than a king. Nnamdi sat down slowly, his bad leg aching as he rested his wooden cane against the table. Chidi pulled out a chair for his fiancée, Chloe. She sat down quickly, her eyes darting back and forth in pure panic. Chidi sat next to her. His expensive charcoal suit felt like it was choking him. He placed the silver hard drive on the table, trying to make his hands stop shaking. Vance sat directly across from Chidi. The billionaire didn't look at the hard drive. He didn't look at the menu. He leaned forward, resting his heavy hands on the table, and looked exclusively at Nnamdi. 15 years, Vance whispered, his voice full of heavy emotion. "I spent 15 years looking for the ghost who pulled me from the fire. When I woke up from my coma, the police told me the hero who saved my life was thrown 30 feet by the blast. They told me his leg was crushed. They told me he was severely burned. But by the time I recovered enough to find you, and the hospital had cleared your records. You had no insurance. You just vanished. Namdi looked down at his rough, scarred hands. I didn't want a reward, sir. I just did what I had to do. The hospital bills, they were too high. I had to leave. I had to figure out how to survive on my own. Vance's eyes filled with fresh tears. You gave up your life for mine. You gave up your body for mine. I am Marcus Vance. I own half the logistics networks in the world. And yet, I have never met a man richer in spirit than you. Tell me your name, son. Please. Namdi took a deep, shaky breath. He looked across the table at his younger brother. Chidi's eyes were wide with pure, begging terror. Chidi was silently pleading with his brother to keep quiet, to walk away. But Namdi was tired of hiding in the shadows. My name is Namdi, he said softly. Namdi Kalu. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a diamond. Vance froze, his thick white eyebrows pulled together. He slowly turned his head and looked at the young, sweating tech executive sitting across from him. He looked at Chidi. Then he looked back at Namdi. Kalu, Vance repeated. The word sounded like poison in his mouth. Your last name is Kalu? Namdi slowly nodded. Vance's chest began to rise and fall with heavy, dangerous breaths. The pieces of the puzzle slammed together in his brilliant, calculating mind. He looked at Chidi's expensive suit. He looked at Namdi's cheap, wet clothes. He remembered seeing Chidi standing under the warm awning while Namdi was shivering in the freezing rain in the dark alleyway. A predator never strikes when it's angry. It strikes when it is perfectly, absolutely calm. Chidi, Vance said. His voice was no longer emotional. It was empty, cold, ruthless. Is this man your brother? Chidi's throat completely closed up. He tried to speak, but only a pathetic squeak came out. He looked at Chloe, who was staring at him in horror. Mr. Vance, Chidi stammered, sweating profusely. Sir, you have to understand. We grew apart. We live very different lives. I am a senior vice president. I have an image to maintain in the corporate world. I can't be seen with... Chidi stopped talking, but it was too late. The damage was done. You can't be seen with him? Vance asked quietly. Let me make sure I understand this perfectly. You needed this silver hard drive for your presentation tonight. You made your disabled brother, the man who walks with a cane, travel through a freezing storm to bring it to you? He has a key to my condo, Chidi blurted out, desperate to defend himself. I didn't have time. The traffic was bad. And when he arrived, Vance continued, his voice dropping an octave, echoing loudly over the quiet dining room. When he brought you the key to your $10 million bonus, you didn't even invite him inside to warm up. You threw him in the mud, like a dog. He was ruining my image, Chidi yelled, his panic finally making him snap. You only do business with winners, Mr. Vance. You said it yourself in the Forbes interview. Winners only associate with winners. Look at him. He's a broken, useless night guard. I couldn't let you see him. Namdi closed his eyes, the words cutting deeper than the fire that ruined his skin. Marcus Vance stood up from the table, and he didn't yell. He didn't throw a punch. He simply reached into the inner pocket of his wet overcoat and pulled out his cell phone. He dialed a number and put it on speakerphone, setting it right next to Chidi's silver hard drive. The phone rang twice. A voice answered. Marcus? Hello? Is everything all right? How is the pitch meeting going? Chidi's blood turned to ice. It was Richard, the CEO of Chidi's tech company. Hello, Richard, Vance said, staring dead into Chidi's terrified eyes. I am sitting across from your senior vice president, Chidi Kalu. I want you to listen to me very carefully. The software buyout is officially canceled. Chidi let out a choked gasp. No. Mr. Vance, please. The software is perfect. Just look at the numbers. But, Vance continued smoothly over the phone, completely ignoring Chidi. I am going to buy your entire company instead. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. I will pay 20% over market value for every single share. Marcus, that's incredible, Richard yelled through the speaker, ecstatic. That's a $200 million deal. We accept. Absolutely. There is one condition, Vance said coldly. You will fire Chidi Kalu right now. On this phone call, you will strip him of his title, his stock options, and his severance package. If he sets one foot in your building tomorrow, the deal is dead, and I will personally bankrupt your firm by Friday. Do we have a deal? There was a 5-second pause on the phone. Chidi, Richard said, his voice instantly turning cold. You are terminated, effective immediately. Leave your company phone and ID at the front desk tomorrow. I do not contact me again. The line clicked dead. Chidi sat totally paralyzed. He couldn't breathe. His vision blurred. In less than 60 seconds, Marcus Vance had completely obliterated 10 years of his hard work. His career was gone. His millions were gone. His reputation in Chicago was permanently destroyed. No firm in the city would ever hire a man who was blacklisted by Marcus Vance. Chloe abruptly pushed her chair back. The scraping wood sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. Chloe? Chidi whispered, reaching out to grab her hand. She pulled her hand away like he was diseased. She looked at his pale, sweating face, and then looked at the silver hard drive sitting uselessly on the table. She didn't love Chidi. She loved the $10 million bonus, and that bonus had just evaporated into thin air. Don't call me, Chloe said coldly. She slipped the diamond engagement ring off her finger, dropped it into Chidi's empty water glass, and walked out of the restaurant without looking back. He had one card left to play, and the universe had just set it completely on fire. Chidi was left sitting completely alone on his side of the table. He was a ruined, broken man. He buried his face in his hands right there in the middle of the luxury steakhouse and began to sob. It wasn't a quiet cry. It was the ugly, pathetic weeping of a man who realized he had just destroyed his own life with his own bare hands. Marcus Vance watched him cry. He felt absolutely zero pity. Vance picked up the silver hard drive from the table. He dropped it onto the marble floor and crushed it beneath the heel of his expensive leather shoe. But Vance turned back to Namdi. The coldness vanished from his face, replaced once again by deep, fatherly warmth. Namdi, Vance said softly, my medical team is the best in the world. Tomorrow morning we are going to fix that leg of yours. I don't care how many surgeries it takes. You will walk without pain again. And when you are ready, there is a seat waiting for you on the executive board of the Vance Foundation. You will never spend another night in the cold as long as you live. Namdi looked at the crushed hard drive. He looked at his younger brother, sobbing pathetically into his hands. Namdi didn't feel triumph. He didn't feel the need to gloat. He just felt a quiet, overwhelming sense of peace. Fate had finally balanced the scales. Thank you, Mr. Vance, Namdi whispered, and a gentle smile crossing his scarred face for the first time in 15 years. I think I would like that very much. Vance smiled back. He signaled to his bodyguards. Bring the car around. We are taking Mr. Kalu home, to his new home. They walked out of the restaurant together. Namdi didn't look back at the table. He walked through the heavy glass doors, stepping out from under the awning. The rain had finally stopped. The dark clouds over Chicago were parting, revealing a bright silver moon shining down on the wet city streets. Namdi stepped into the warm leather seat of the Rolls-Royce, leaving the cold, the pain, and his arrogant brother behind forever. If Chidi had just looked past his own blinding pride for 5 seconds, if he had just offered his shivering brother a chair in the lobby, and he would have been sitting at the table when the billionaire realized who Namdi was, Chidi would have shared in the ultimate reward, but he chose cruelty over family. And fate always forces you to pay the exact price of your choices. If you want to see who fate visits next, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Because in these stories, The proud always fall to the dirt, and the humble, they always rise to the sky.
Años exactamente, bueno, no exactamente, ¿no? Un grupo de soñadores en La Paz decidió fundar algo que trascendería generaciones. El glorioso Club Bolívar. No imaginaron que... Oye, me he esforzado al hacer el discurso. ¿Qué ponen ZZ, chat? Basta, me he esforzado, se los juro que me he esforzado, bro, basta. Por favor, me he esforzado en el discurso, respéteme un poquito, chat. Bueno, igual lo voy a leer, me la chupan, la verdad. Chat, nefastos. Son unos envidiosos, ¿saben? Son unos envidiosos. ¿En qué me quedé? No imaginaron que ese nombre se convertiría en un sinónimo de grandeza, lucha y de orgullo nacional. 101 años después, Bolívar no es solo un club. Es un sentimiento que se hereda, que se sufre y se celebra. Últimamente sufrimos mucho por Robato, ¿no? Es el latido de miles de hinchas que en cada victoria y en cada caída nunca abandonan, ¿verdad? Nomás. Porque ser celeste no es una elección, es una forma de vivir. Muy bien, qué lindo, un aplauso. Bravo, bravo. Muchachos, tremendo discurso. Buenas noches, Edito, ¿cómo estás? Por lo menos ponte tu chompita, pues, un busito para leer el discurso. A ver, cállate, Gabo, ¿vos quieres ser baneado? Este discurso lo he hecho en mi cama, pensando en lo que es ser bolivarista, la verdad. Un aplauso, por favor, y con ayuda también del gran ChatGPT. Un aplauso para ChatGPT. Ah, ¿cuál era la finalización de un ratito? Dice... que estos 101 años sean solo el comienzo de muchas más llenos de alegría. Felicidades, Academia. Felicidades, Bolívar. ¡Bravo! Aplausos para ChatGPT, muchachos. Para vos no, dice. Buenas noches, muchachos, ¿cómo están? Gracias por estar aquí, perdón por prender tan tarde. La verdad estaba viendo mi serie, estaba viendo el regreso de Justin Bieber. Bueno, toda la tarde me vi fútbol, hasta vi el partido del Tigre, vi el partido de River, vi el partido de Oriente, las declaraciones de Martins, tremendo lo de Martins, bebé, le tiró palo a Villegas, pero bien tirado. Huevada, en su cama lo hizo todo pajeado pensando en el... No, ¿qué dice este Arielito? Oye, ¿quieres vamos, no? Mi sobrino de kinder redacta mejor. Dile eso a ChatGPT, yo no he redactado. ¿Qué me estás molestando a mí? Felicidades. Qué basado. Pues la verdad nomás. ¿Qué quieren que les diga? A ver, ¿qué les puedo decir, muchachos? Yo no publiqué nada en mi página, la verdad no hice nada estos días. Han sido momentos difíciles. Bien triste, ¿no? Mentira. Pero no, muchachos, bueno. Quiero felicitar a todos los que son bolivaristas y hoy en día más que nunca, ¿no? Que es difícil ser bolivarista en el sentido de todo el contexto que estamos pasando con el técnico. Pero si lo ven por el otro lado también hay que sentirnos orgullosos porque hemos llegado a estos 101 años. Creo que como la institución mejor parada, tanto económicamente, futbolísticamente y dirigencialmente diría, pero no, creo que no, ahí nos falta, ¿no? Ese eslabón para poder ser una institución sólida. Y como ayer creo que lo decía Dardo Gómez en su publicación en el Cholet, que Dios mío, ¿de dónde cagan tanta plata, bebés? Más fuegos pirotécnicos que en el aniversario de La Paz, no mames. Tremendo, felicidades a los del Cholet y a ver si pasan pues algunos monies. No mentira. Que dijo que el dirigente tiene que estar siempre al lado del hincha. Y eso es mucha verdad. Y no es por darle palo a Claure, porque él tendrá sus funciones, las cosas que tienen que hacer.